Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a ver un nuevo verbo irregular del inglés. Vamos a aprender el verbo elegir. Hi everybody. Today we will learn a new Spanish irregular verb. We will do the verb elegir. Elegir means to choose. So, elegir is one of the irregular verbs we have seen with the letter E, right? We will do the most common, most used Spanish tenses. So I want to tell you something first. You can see that the root of the verb, elige, okay? And the last two letters are the ending, okay? The last two letters ir, are what determine that this verb belongs to the third group of verbs, right? The verbs that end in ir. So elige is the root. You'll see how here the root of the verb changes several times, and sometimes we, instead of using the G, we use the J, like here, okay, or here. So let me tell you first why we use the J in this case, and so you understand the logic. The root of the verb uses the G, right? But you know that G, same as in English, has one pronunciation when it's followed by E and I, and a different pronunciation when it's followed by A, O, or U, right? He, he, and ga, ge, gi, ga, ge, go. Sorry, ga, go, gu, okay? So, the root of the verb, it's the sound, okay? So, here, when the conjugation adds an O, if we leave the G instead of the sound, it will be the G sound. It will be eligo, eligo, if we left the G. That's why, to keep the pronunciation of the verb, we switch to the J, right? Elijo, okay? It's just in order to maintain the original pronunciation of the verb in the infinitive. Ok, ahora comenzaremos a conjugar el verbo elegir. Now let's begin to conjugate the verb elegir. Tiempo presente. Yo elijo, I choose. Tú eliges, for you choose. Él or ella elige, he or she chooses. Nosotros elegimos, we choose. Vosotros elegís, you plural choose. Ustedes eligen, for you plural choose, and ellos eligen, they choose. Fíjense que en color verde he escrito la terminación típica para la presente conjugación. Bien, o sea que tenemos en color verde la terminación apropiada y en color azul tenemos la raíz del verbo que vemos que en algunos casos cambia, se transforma. What I just said is, you can see that in green I have written the appropriate ending for these verbs, right? According to each verbal tense. So this ending that you can see in green is the proper ending for all regular verbs, okay? And most irregular verbs in Spanish, they have the same regular ending, right? In Spanish, mostly verbs are irregular, not because of the ending, but because the root of the verb changes in some way, okay? As here, you can see that instead of elige, it says elige, okay? It changed the E for an I and the G for a J. And you can see that in many other cases here. So usually Spanish verbs, they change the root of the verb, but not the ending. So you can see that the ending is the same ending of all regular verbs that are conjugated, right? So see the ending is in green, the root of the verb is in blue. Example here. If I want to say, I choose to stay, I will say, yo elijo quedarme, right? Quedarme. To stay is a reflexive verb in Spanish, means to stay myself. quedarme, okay? Or to remain myself would be to stay. They chose red. Ellos eligieron rojo. Or they chose the red one. Ellos eligieron el rojo or la roja in the case of a feminine object, okay? Or we can ask, which one do you choose? In Spanish, that is, ¿cuál eliges? ¿Cuál eliges or ¿cuál eliges tú? We can omit or include the subject pronoun, okay? Now let's do the pasado simple. Yo elegí. Tú elegiste. Él eligió. Nosotros elegimos. Vosotros elegisteis. Ustedes eligieron. Ellos eligieron. Okay? For they chose. Let me mark here where we have an irregularity. Here we have irregularity because eleg changed for elige. Here as well. Irregular. And here. Okay? Eleg, this is irregular, irregular, and irregular. Okay? Here we can see that the root of the verb has changed. If we want to say, they chose to go with dad. They chose to go with dad. In Spanish we would say, ellos eligieron ir con papá. Okay? Or they chose to leave tomorrow. Ellos eligieron partir mañana or irse mañana. Right? In Spanish, the verb to leave, there are two ways of saying it. Partir or irse, which means it's a reflexive form of the verb to go. It would be like saying to go themselves tomorrow or to leave tomorrow, right? Let's do the simple future. Yo elegiré. Yo elegiré. I will choose. Tú elegirás. Él elegirá. Nosotros elegiremos. Vosotros elegiréis. Ustedes elegirán. And ellos elegirán. For they will choose. You can see that here this verb is perfectly regular, right? No irregularity here. An example in the future tense. I will choose the bigger one, for example, okay? I will choose a bigger one. In Spanish we would say that yo elegiré el más grande, okay? Remember when we had the lesson about superlative, okay? El más grande means the bigger one, okay? It can also mean the biggest in Spanish, okay? So the context here will determine whether we want to say the bigger one or the biggest, okay? Now let's do the other future, the alternative future. For example, we just said, I will choose. We can also say, I am going to choose. So, yo voy a elegir means I am going to choose. Tú vas a elegir. Él va a elegir. Nosotros vamos a elegir. Vosotros vais a elegir. Ustedes van a elegir and ellos van a elegir. Okay, you can see we only conjugate the auxiliary verb, the verb to go, right? The verb ir. So, an example. Let's change the pronoun. He. He will choose the career to follow, okay? Él va a elegir la carrera a seguir. Okay, career in Spanish is